Hi, my name is Aaron, this is my show Reeducation, and today we're going to talk a little bit about how to lead liberals. Now, I've put out a couple videos that have explained how you should never let liberals lead, such as the video, Never Let Liberals Lead, which will probably be linked at the end of this video. But today we're going to talk a little bit about how we can lead liberals and hopefully actually make some real changes within society. So with all that being said, let's get into it. So I have 5 main ideas that you can use to help lead liberals in your community. Now, they're going to be based on different scenarios, so we're going to talk a little bit about each one of those. And the number 5 spot goes to workplace organizing. Now, there's a very strong chance that you're going to have liberals in the workplace. And I don't just mean that in the modern sense of the word, where you are talking about the liberal parties. I mean in a more traditional sense. You're going to have conservatives and liberals, and traditionally, they're all liberals. And you're going to have a lot of them at your workplace. You're not going to usually have a whole lot of socialists, but if you do, that makes things a little bit easier. Workplace organizing is one of the classic ways that leftists have used to help liberate people throughout history, throughout at least the history of leftism. Getting together with your coworkers and other employees allows you to be able to use the power of collective bargaining. And of course, collective bargaining is the idea that when you're working together or fighting together for something specific, like higher wages or better working conditions, you'll have a better chance of gaining those things if you work together than on your own. Solidarity unions and industrial unions like the IWW can help you gain that sort of power within your workplace. Organizations like these have the information and proper know-how to help you fight against your employer and achieve better working conditions. They have information that you can use that will be very useful, and they also have access to things like lawyers and legal teams that can help when things get escalated to a certain point. Now, there's a lot of people that'll say, don't join a union, you're just going to pay union dues and your dues aren't going to go to anything, and sometimes that isn't necessarily wrong. A lot of modern unions have been completely corrupted by the capitalist system and the people in charge, either of the workplace or of the government, and they don't really help you in a lot of different ways. But organizing democratically and on the ground and making your own unions, possibly using the IWW as a blueprint, you will be able to do a lot more than just giving your dues to a modern union. Some are great, some are terrible. And you have to be able to weigh which one is which. If a modern union that you belong to seems like they're actually fighting for the people, then joining with them might be the best strategy. But always remember that the fundamental point of unionizing is not just to organize your workplace, but it's to organize the entire industry so everyone can fight for better conditions. And sometimes just getting together with your coworkers is a form of unionizing. You're collectively using your knowledge and abilities to help one another. Now remember, with this comes a lot of danger. If businesses find out that you're trying to form a union, they'll likely try to fire you, or they'll try to use all sorts of other ways to get you fired or make you quit. In some places it's legal, in some places it isn't, and you have to check your local laws to make sure that you're doing everything that you can to not get arrested or fired. Many workplaces put out anti-union propaganda, and many more check the employees to make sure that they're not doing things like talking to each other too much at lunchtime or organizing outside of the business hours. So make sure that you're using caution when you're doing any kind of workplace organizing. And remember that it's one of the main strategies that leftists have used to achieve revolution all across the world and throughout history. Workers of the world unite. In the number 4 spot, we have organizing mutual aid networks locally. Now, organizing a mutual aid network can actually encompass a lot of different things, and it really greatly depends on what your community needs, how you can provide those services, and really bases itself on what your and your neighbor's strengths really are. To start a mutual aid network, I have many videos on the subject, but the cliff notes are basically go out into the community, find out what that community needs, and see if you can provide that service in some way. In some places, it's going to be related to food insecurity. In others, it's going to be related to housing or any number of other things, perhaps homelessness, perhaps drug addiction. If you're able to find out what those problems are, or the main ones within a community, then you can work with that community to find solutions. In our community, we had a food insecurity issue, and we are working towards a solution through our community fridge mutual aid network. And that's just the beginning of it. The community fridge network was a great groundwork for us to actually start building solidarity within the community, and now we have our fingers in a lot of different pies, all of which are trying to make things better within the entire city, but focusing directly on our local area. Now, this is a process that takes time, and it's not going to fully happen right away. You have to build the groundwork first, and you have to do it with the consent of the rest of the community. When you decide that you're going to try to find a solution, you can't just make it on your own. You have to make it together, or else it's not going to stick. If you want to start a mutual aid network that has a permanent structure like a community fridge, go around to the people in that community and ask them if that's something that they would want or need. There are a lot of different complications that come with such a thing, such as taking care of the garbage, making sure that it's clean, doing all of the delivery work, and that sort of thing. And if you can get people in the local community to be on board with that and help out with it and be invested in the cause, then you're going to be a whole lot better. And that's a great way to get liberals in your community, not just the traditional ones, but the classic ones as well, to start working and seeing in real time that direct action actually solves problems. Education through action. In the number 3 spot, we have fighting against tyrannical laws and the oppression of people. In basically every community, you're going to see many different minority groups that are facing severe but radically different types of oppression. Sometimes there will be LGBT people who can't get proper medical care or face incredible societal stigma. There will be people of color fighting not only for equality under the law, but equality in society as well. And there can also be indigenous people that are fighting for their land back or fighting to stop the genocide that's happening within their community. All of these different things are related in that with one person struggling, we all struggle. If one person isn't free, then none of us are free. So an intersectional approach along with collective action and collective organizing is the solution to that problem. So standing alongside that specific person or group that is being oppressed and using collective solidarity and unity to bring in every other group of people to stand alongside them as well is how we solve this problem. And with this, it's important to remember that liberal organizations and capitalist businesses will try to latch onto these organizations or these ideas and co-opt them, convert them into something that'll help them sell their product or encourage you to waste your time voting for something or someone that won't make any real change. But unfortunately, the massive hurdle that we have with this specific point is that liberals don't often get involved with anything unless it directly affects them. So we have to make them know that this always directly affects them too. Now, this is probably going to be the hardest part, and possibly even a Herculean, I'm not sure how to say that word, effort, but it is possible, and it's helped along with the fact that the system and the way things are right now continue to get progressively worse. Unfortunately, a lot of liberals are like the frogs boiling slowly in a pot of water, but at this point, the water has pretty much boiled away, and they're still alive, burning to the bottom of the pan. So it's up to us to point that out to them, and to show them that a lot of the laws that are going to be coming in within the next few years, especially with this whole Supreme Court being dominated by conservatives thing, is going to affect them personally, and that a lot of these laws and a lot of these ideas have already been tested for decades on the most vulnerable among us and minority groups. Pointing out that voting for the lesser evil or having blind faith in the process isn't a convincing argument, and even horrible, terrible laws like banning abortion still happen under democratic leadership or rulership. Pointing out ideas like the ratchet effect, the thing that I talked about in my last video, where every time a conservative is in power, the laws and policies move to the right, while every time a Democrat or a liberal is in power, they prevent anything from moving to the left. This is the illusion of having a two-party system when both parties actually just work for the same capitalist owner class. And it's easier and easier nowadays to point out how terrible billionaires and millionaires are. It's just a matter of moving that anger away from specific individuals and towards the systems that created those individuals. But don't get me wrong, still be very, very mad at those specific individuals. Point out how forced sterilization and forced abortion has been happening to indigenous people and the disabled for decades. Point out how this system keeps marching further and further towards a fascist dictatorship every single time a Republican makes a law or every single time a Democrat doesn't prevent one. Show them images of how police have been brutalizing innocent people and violently aggressing against peaceful protesters, women and children when they try to fight for their rights. There's lots of video online of police brutalizing innocent people that are literally fighting for the bodily autonomy of women as we speak. And getting every one of those liberals to stand alongside us while we stand beside the people that are oppressed the most and aid them in the fight to liberate their people. A fight for one is a fight for all, and none of us are free until all of us are free. Now, sitting at the number 2 spot is building dual power and performing direct action. Now, this can be done in a lot of different ways, but the one example that I like to use is building housing cooperatives or organizing with other tenants or renters within your community so that just like collective bargaining in the workplace, you can work together to reduce rents or increase your standard of living. In some places, people have even taken over entire buildings or houses and eliminated rent entirely. Again, this is something that takes a lot of work, and it's not something that's going to happen overnight. A lot of groundwork has to be built, and through mutual aid networks like I talked about before, that's a great place to start. Organizing our workplaces is incredibly important, but in the modern day, as things grow and change and evolve, more and more people are ending up in different types of businesses that never really existed in the past, like the digital economy, and a lot of people still have the mindset of having grind set, or the constantly grinding mentality, the hustle culture mentality, if you will. So that means that there are a ton of people that are contract workers or self-employed, and a lot of them are doing their work from home. That's not to mention all of the people that don't even have jobs, or in the reserve army of labor, people that are unemployed or underemployed that the capitalists can point to and say, hey, if you workers don't smarten up and stop fighting for your rights, there are all these people who are going to want to have your job, so don't fight. Don't do anything. Just do as we say. A ton of your life is spent in the home. A ton of your life is spent in your community and organizing locally in your community with renters, with other tenants, and building those tenants' unions and doing those sorts of direct actions is a great step forward. Another great example of direct action is working together with professionals and providing medical services that have all of a sudden become impossible or illegal to get, like abortion. Helping to provide those services in a safe, sanitary, and medically professional way is definitely a form of direct action that has to be considered. And building community councils, or Soviets, is a great solution to this problem. And finally, the number one way to lead a liberal has to do with when things finally boil over and protests start happening and demonstrations and actions explode out into the streets. The best way to lead liberals is to literally lead. It's to confidently and respectfully help direct the masses, because the masses, when these sorts of things happen, don't often have any direction. So they're left open to the state through the use of the police or through liberal organizations that have been co-opted or corrupted to do the leading for them. It's not like this is new. Governments know that when spontaneous action happens in the streets, when people get out there and start protesting, they're just out there without any real direction. So that's the perfect opportunity for the government and the state to step in and give them that direction. They'll march them in circles. They'll surround them on every street and kettle them into certain areas. They'll march organizations and groups directly into buildings and then shoot tear gas into those buildings. They do all of these things because there isn't much direction when it comes to spontaneous action. So that means that democratic organizations that are organized anarchistically need to step up and provide that direction. Clear direction and comprehensive understanding of what you are doing and why you are there is how we succeed. Anarchism is not chaos. Anarchism is closely linked with order. And we have to be orderly or else we're never going to succeed. Sometimes knowing what you need to do isn't straightforward and you might get some things wrong. A lot of this can be solved through meetings, but really the best way to solve it is through practice. Practice will eventually make this perfect. But remember, you're not a dictator. You're a facilitator and an organizer. And you have to work with your community to find out how to actually make these things happen. And you have to do it beforehand, so we're not reacting to things, but proactively organizing and making things perfect. Now, this isn't going to be easy, and it was never meant to be. But if you provide organization, structure, and cooperation, then that's what you will receive in the future. That's what you'll receive in return. One day you might get something wrong and things might fall apart, but you use that as a learning experience. Use self-crit and make changes the following day and work together with your community to find out how to do that best. The community and all of us working together will be able to solve problems collectively far, far better than you ever will on your own. So use that power. We are stronger together. All 5 of these ideas work as a decentralized network autonomously, but also collectively. And when we work together and organize all of these different ideas, the direct action networks, the liberation networks, the mutual aid networks, the housing cooperatives, the worker cooperatives, and all of those things, when we all work together collectively, then we have a far better chance of succeeding. At least that's the way I look at it. My name is Aaron. Thank you very much for watching, and keep evolving.